Hello and welcome, wherever in the world you're watching from today. Here is a number worth sitting with. Between the ages of 51 and 60, about half of all men already have a prostate that has begun to enlarge. By the age of 80, that figure climbs as high as 90%. Those numbers come from the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases. Most men past 60 assume the slower stream and the extra trip at 2 in the morning are simply age arriving on schedule. Age is part of it. But almost no one was ever told what to put on the plate to support that small gland doing quiet work every single hour for 60 years. Before we go one step further, let me be straight with you. If you have been diagnosed with an enlarged prostate with prostatitis or with prostate cancer, or if you are taking any medication for urinary symptoms, some of what follows may not apply to you the same way it applies to your neighbor. This is general education about a healthy eating pattern. It is not treatment, and it is not prevention. Please take any change you are considering to your own doctor first. Now let me give you the honest landscape, because you deserve real numbers rather than a sales pitch. The American Cancer Society reports that prostate cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer in American men, apart from skin cancer, and that roughly 1 man in 8 will be diagnosed at some point in his life. The average age at diagnosis is about 67, and around 6 in 10 of those diagnoses occur in men age 65 and older. So if you are 60 or beyond, you are sitting in the years that matter most. And here is what most videos on this subject will not say out loud. The National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases states plainly that researchers have not found that diet and nutrition cause or prevent benign prostatic hyperplasia, the medical name for an enlarged prostate. Read that twice because it is the ground we are standing on. No food on this list will shrink a prostate. No food on this list is a treatment for anything. What food can do is quieter, and at 60 and beyond, far more useful. It can support the tissue and the neighborhood around that gland, the blood vessels feeding it, the inflammatory signaling moving through it, the growth messages it listens to, and the bowel and bladder pressed up against it. That is the honest promise of this list, and it is the one worth 20 minutes of your evening. We are counting down 6 foods, from number 6 down to number 1. Stay with me through all 6, because the food at number 1 is one that nearly every man over 60 already has in his kitchen, and almost every one of them prepares it in the single way that wastes most of what makes it worth eating. Before we begin, do me one small favor. Type your age into the comments, along with one quiet change you have noticed in the past year: a weaker stream, a slower start, one more trip at night. And because you have stayed with me this far, I have something for you. In just a moment, a code will appear on your screen. Scan it with your phone camera, and it will take you straight to my book, The 90-Year Blueprint, my guide to eating for healthy aging. The same evidence-based approach we use here, written out in full, with the food lists and the simple weekly plans laid out plainly. There is nothing to pay and nothing to sign up for. The 90-Year Blueprint is my gift to you. Scan it now, then come straight back, because number 6 is where we begin. Before the countdown starts, hold on to 4 ideas, because you will meet all 4 again in every single food we discuss. First, inflammation. Not the kind you can feel, but the low, steady background signaling that accumulates in aging tissue, and which certain fats and plant pigments help bring back down. Second, growth signaling. Prostate tissue is unusually responsive to hormones and to growth messages, and insulin is one of the loudest of those messages. Foods that keep blood sugar steady keep that message quieter. Third, and almost nobody mentions this one, your gut bacteria are part of the machinery. Several compounds in these 6 foods arrive in your body inactive. Bacteria in your colon convert them into the forms your tissue can actually use. The food you eat is feeding 2 things at once, you and the microbes that finish the job. Fourth, absorption. Some of the most valuable compounds on this list are fat-soluble, which means that without a little fat on the same plate, they pass through you largely unused. That single fact is why number 1 sits exactly where it does. Keep those 4 in mind. Number 6, coming up. Number 6, cruciferous vegetables. Broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, kale, bok choy, and the humble turnip. The mechanism here is genuinely elegant. These plants store compounds called glucosinolates inside their cells, held apart from an enzyme called myrosinase. Nothing happens while the vegetable sits whole on the counter. The moment you chop it, crush it, or chew it, that wall breaks down and the enzyme converts the glucosinolates into a family of compounds called isothiocyanates, sulforaphane being the best known of them. What isothiocyanates do inside a cell is switch on a signaling pathway called NRF2. Think of NRF2 as the master switch for your body's own protective enzymes, the ones that neutralize reactive molecules and repair everyday oxidative wear. You are not swallowing an antioxidant here. You are instructing your cells to manufacture their own. Why that matters for the prostate specifically: prostate tissue accumulates oxidative wear steadily across a man's 60s and 70s, and it sits in a region with a heavy blood supply and constant hormonal traffic. Now, the honest part. The National Cancer Institute's own review of cruciferous vegetables notes that while laboratory results are striking, population studies in humans have been mixed. So this is a good pattern food, not a miracle one. The American Cancer Society recommends 2.5 to 3 cups of vegetables every day for adults, and cruciferous vegetables are one of the better ways to fill that. How to put it on your plate: chop it, then leave it on the cutting board for about 10 minutes before it meets any heat. That pause lets the enzyme finish its work before cooking shuts it down. Steam or roast rather than boil, because boiling leaches those compounds into water you then pour down the sink. 2 solid servings a week is a realistic starting point. 4 is better. And if raw cabbage or slaw is what you actually enjoy, that counts too. Chewing does the same work as the knife. Number 5, beans and lentils. Black beans, chickpeas, kidney beans, red and green lentils, split peas. The mechanism runs on fiber, but not the way most people picture it. When soluble fiber from beans reaches your colon undigested, the bacteria living there ferment it and produce short-chain fatty acids, butyrate chief among them. Butyrate feeds the cells lining your colon and moderates inflammatory signaling that travels well beyond the gut. Beans also carry plant sterols and lignans are one of those compounds your gut bacteria have to convert into an active form. That is idea number 3, showing up right on schedule. There is a second, more immediate reason for men over 60. Your prostate, your bladder, and your rectum are close neighbors in a tight space. A loaded, hard-to-pass bowel presses directly against the bladder and the urethra, and straining is miserable when urination is already slow. Regularity is not a side issue in this conversation. It is local mechanics. Here is the hard number. The dietary guidelines put fiber for men over 50 at about 28 grams a day, and most American men take in roughly half that. A single cup of cooked lentils delivers around 15 grams, more than half a day's target in one bowl. Beans do one more thing worth naming. Every serving of beans on your plate is usually a serving of red or processed meat that is not on your plate, and the American Cancer Society specifically recommends limiting red and processed meats inside a healthy eating pattern. How to add them: start with half a cup, 3 times a week, in soup, in chili, mashed onto toast, or tossed cold through a salad. If your system is not used to them, build up slowly across 2 or 3 weeks and drink more water. Rinse canned beans well. That alone washes away a good share of the added sodium. Dried lentils need no soaking and cook in 20 minutes, which makes them the easiest entry point on this whole list. Number 4, whole grains. Oats, barley, brown and wild rice, bulgur, buckwheat, and genuine whole grain bread. The mechanism sits in the parts of the grain that milling strips away. A whole grain keeps its bran and its germ, and with them the fiber, the magnesium, the vitamin E, and a group of compounds called lignans. Refine that same grain, and you are left with mostly starch. Two things follow from that. First, the intact structure slows the release of glucose into your bloodstream, which means a smaller, gentler rise in insulin after the meal. That matters here because insulin is not only a blood sugar hormone, it also increases the availability of a growth factor called IGF-1, and prostate tissue responds to growth signaling. Keeping after-meal insulin calm keeps that background message quieter meal after meal, year after year. Second, the lignans. On their own, they do very little. Your gut bacteria convert them into a compound called enterolactone, which circulates in your blood and carries mild hormone-modulating activity. A bowl of barley is, in effect, raw material handed over to your microbes. The guidance itself is refreshingly simple. The dietary guidelines ask that at least half of all the grain you eat be whole grain, and the American Cancer Society is blunter still. Choose whole grains over refined grains. Most men over 60 are nowhere near half. How to do it without rebuilding your kitchen? Swap one refined grain a day, not all of them at once. Rolled oats instead of a flaked cereal at breakfast. A handful of barley thrown into the soup pot. Brown rice alongside dinner twice a week. And when you buy bread, turn the loaf over and read the first ingredient. If the word whole is not there, that brown color on the front of the bag is caramel coloring, not grain. Steel cut and rolled oats both qualify. The instant packets with added sugar largely do not. And barley in particular is worth knowing. It holds more soluble fiber than most grains on the shelf. We are halfway down the list. If what you have heard so far has been useful, if it has been specific, honest about what the evidence does and does not show, and free of anything you have to buy, then the single most helpful thing you can do right now is tap the like button and subscribe. That is all. Every week I sit down with the research and translate it into plain language for people over 60, and the like button is what puts this in front of the next man who needs to hear it. Thank you for that. Number three, berries. Blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, and if you can find them, tart cherries and pomegranate. The mechanism is in the color. Those deep reds, purples, and blue-blacks are anthocyanins, pigments that in the plant absorb light and in your body moderate oxidative stress and inflammatory signaling. Raspberries, blackberries, and pomegranate additionally carry compounds called alagitannins, and here your gut bacteria return for the third time. They convert alagitannins into compounds called urolithins, and urolithins are what actually enter your bloodstream. That is why two men can eat the identical bowl of raspberries and end up with quite different amounts circulating, depending on which bacteria they happen to carry. For a prostate at 60 and beyond, the relevant point is cumulative oxidative wear. Tissue in that region has been operating under decades of steady oxidative and inflammatory pressure, and berries are among the most concentrated dietary sources of the pigments that ease it. The numbers. The American Cancer Society recommends 1.5 to 2 cups of fruit a day, and the National Institute on Aging places fruit and vegetables at the center of what it recommends for older adults. A cup of blueberries carries about 4 grams of fiber with very modest sugar, which makes it one of the better fruit-to-sugar trades available to a man watching his blood glucose. How to add them: half a cup a day, and please use frozen. Frozen berries are picked ripe and frozen within hours, which often makes them the equal of fresh at a third of the price, available in February as easily as in July. Stir them into your morning oats. That is number 4 and number 3 on the same spoon, or into plain yogurt in the evening. If you buy fresh, eat them within a few days, because those pigments fade as the fruit sits. And skip the berry-flavored products entirely, because the flavoring carries none of the compounds we have just discussed. Number 2, oily fish, salmon, sardines, mackerel, herring, anchovies, and trout. 2 omega-3 fatty acids do the work here, EPA and DHA. They are not anti-inflammatory in some vague way. They are built directly into your cell membranes, and from there your body manufactures a class of molecules called resolvins and protectins. That name is the whole point. These are not blockers. They are the active signal that tells an inflammatory response it is finished and time to clear out. In aging tissue, that switch-off signal weakens, and inflammation that should have resolved in days instead lingers quietly for years. Oily fish also delivers vitamin D, a nutrient a great many men over 60 run low on, particularly through the winter, and one that prostate tissue carries receptors for. Now, honesty again, because that is what earns your trust. The evidence linking fish and omega-3s specifically to prostate outcomes in humans is genuinely mixed. Some studies found benefit, at least one large analysis found the opposite association, and no health body claims. The question is settled. Oily fish sits at number 2 for a different and sturdier reason. It is a cornerstone of the overall eating pattern that both the American Cancer Society and the National Institute on Aging recommend for healthy aging, and it displaces something worse. The number to hold on to. The dietary guidelines recommend about 8 ounces of seafood a week, which is 2 decent servings. How to add it? Canned sardines on whole grain toast is the cheapest omega-3 meal in any supermarket, and the soft bones bring calcium along with them. Bake, broil, or poach it. Deep frying in the wrong oil undoes the point entirely. 2 servings a week, and if you genuinely dislike fish, canned salmon in a sandwich counts just the same. One practical note on the small fish. Sardines, anchovies, and herring sit low on the food chain, which means they accumulate far less mercury than the large predatory fish, and that is a real consideration when you are eating seafood twice a week for years. And number 1, the food nearly every man over 60 already owns and prepares in the one way that wastes it. Cooked tomatoes with a little olive oil. Here is why it takes the top spot. The compound of interest is lycopene, the carotenoid that makes a tomato red. In a raw tomato, lycopene is locked inside tough plant cell walls and bound into the fruit's matrix, so you swallow most of it and pass most of it straight through. Heat changes that twice over. It breaks down those cell walls and releases the lycopene, and it converts the straight-chain transform into bent cis forms, which your intestine absorbs considerably more readily. Then comes the second half, which is the part people miss. Lycopene is fat-soluble. Without fat in the same meal, the released lycopene cannot be packaged into the chylomicrons that ferry it across your intestinal wall and into your blood. A spoonful of olive oil in that pan is not a garnish. It is the delivery vehicle. Cooked tomato with a little fat can raise absorbed lycopene several times over compared with a raw slice on a sandwich. Why the prostate specifically? Because prostate tissue concentrates lycopene more than most tissue in the body, which is precisely why researchers took an interest in the first place. And now the caveat you have earned. The National Cancer Institute's assessment is that human results for lycopene and prostate outcomes have been inconsistent. The laboratory work is promising. The human trials have not lined up neatly behind it, so make it a good habit, not an insurance policy. How to do it? A simple sauce from canned crushed tomatoes, softened in a tablespoon of olive oil with a little garlic, or tomatoes halved and roasted with oil until they collapse. Tomato paste is the most concentrated source on the shelf. A spoonful stirred into soup or stew does the job on a Tuesday night. Choose the low-sodium can and go carefully with jarred sauces, because many carry a startling amount of salt and added sugar. So there they are, all 6. Cruciferous vegetables at number 6, beans and lentils at 5, whole grains at 4, berries at 3, oily fish at 2, and cooked tomatoes with a little olive oil at number 1. Now step back and look at the shape of it, because these 6 were never meant to be 6 separate errands. They work as a system, and the same handful of mechanisms keeps reappearing. Look at how often your gut bacteria did the finishing work. Fiber from beans became butyrate. Lignans from whole grains became enterolactone. Elegotannins from berries became urolithins. 3 of the 6 foods handed over raw material that your own microbes had to convert before your body could use any of it. And the fiber in the other foods is exactly what keeps those microbes populated. Feed the bacteria, and you improve what you extract from the rest of the list. Look at absorption. The olive oil that unlocks lycopene from tomatoes also carries the fat-soluble vitamins out of your broccoli and your kale. The same tablespoon works twice. That is why the traditional plate and vegetables cooked in a little oil, not steamed dry and served plain, is not merely a matter of taste. Look at inflammation. The resolvins from oily fish, the anthocyanins from berries, the NRF2 switch flipped by cruciferous vegetables, the butyrate from beans, 4 different foods arriving at the same target from 4 different directions, which is far more robust than leaning on any single one. Look at growth signaling. Whole grains steady the insulin curve. Beans steady it further. Fiber slows everything down. And each one of them takes up room on the plate that something else would otherwise occupy. That is the last mechanism, and it may be the most powerful of all: displacement. Every one of these 6 foods works partly by being there instead of something else, instead of the refined grain, instead of the processed meat, instead of the sweetened drink. You are not adding 6 chores to your week. You are making 6 swaps, and notice the honesty running underneath all of it. 2 of the 6 came with a plain caveat about mixed human evidence. That is what a real eating pattern looks like. Not one hero food, but a steady, unglamorous, overlapping pattern that supports the whole system. Food is one lever. Let me give you the rest, because leaving them out would be doing you a disservice. Weight around the middle matters, and so does movement. The National Institute on Aging recommends that older adults aim for at least 150 minutes of moderate activity a week, a brisk half-hour walk, 5 days. Sleep matters. Alcohol and caffeine in the evening irritate the bladder in most men, and shifting your last real drink of fluid to 2 hours before bed is one of the simplest ways to reduce nighttime trips. When you do go, take your time and try again a minute later. Emptying more completely means going less often. Then there are the 2 simple tests: a PSA blood test, a single vial of blood, and a digital rectal exam, which takes under a minute. The American Cancer Society does not tell every man to run out and get screened. It recommends a conversation with your doctor about the benefits and the limits of screening, starting at 50 for men at average risk, 45 for men at higher risk, including Black men and those with a father or brother diagnosed before 65, and 40 for men with more than one close relative diagnosed early. Have that conversation. Make it a decision rather than a drift. And some symptoms are not a wait-and-see matter. The National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases says to seek care immediately if you cannot urinate at all, if you have painful or frequent urination together with fever and chills, if there is blood in your urine, or if you have real pain low in the abdomen or urinary tract. Those need a doctor today, not a grocery list. One last thing. This advice flips for some of you. If you have chronic kidney disease, the beans and whole grains here are high in potassium and phosphorus, and your team may restrict them. If you take warfarin, large swings in leafy greens change how that drug behaves. If you are in treatment for prostate cancer, your oncology team's instructions override everything in this video. I want to leave you with this. Nothing on this list requires you to be young or wealthy or particularly disciplined. A can of tomatoes, a bag of frozen berries, a tin of sardines, a bag of lentils. That is under $15, and it is available in every supermarket in the country. It is genuinely never too late to eat better than you did last month. and your body responds at 75 just as it does at 55, thus, only more gratefully. If there is a man in your life who has been quietly getting up twice a night and mentioning it to nobody, your husband, your father, your brother, the friend you have coffee with on Saturdays, send him this. He will very likely never bring it up himself. That one share is a kindness, and it costs you nothing. And once more, because it matters more than anything else I have said tonight, if you have a diagnosed prostate condition, if you are on medication for urinary symptoms, or if you are managing kidney disease or diabetes, take this list to your own doctor before you change anything. This is general education about a healthy eating pattern, not treatment, not prevention, and not a substitute for the person who knows your history. That code is on your screen now. Scan it with your phone, and my book, The 90-Year Blueprint, my guide to eating for healthy aging, is yours. No cost, nothing to sign up for, my gift for spending this time with me. If this was useful, subscribe, because there is a new one every week built the same way, from the research outward. And tell me in the comments which of the 6 you are going to try first. The tomatoes, the sardines, the lentils? I read them, and I answer as many as I can. Take good care of yourself, and I will see you next time.